Hi. So a recent facet, a recent aspect of this kind of re-emergence or possible second wave that we're seeing is the impact on students. And I have to say, I have a lot of sympathy with students in this situation. I've seen, and I've shared it, this kind of narrative going around that people shouldn't complain because, for example, someone born in 1900 would have went through the First World War, the 1918 pandemic, the Great Depression, World War Two. Um, oh, why should young people complain today? They don't know how hard it is. But I don't think that the impacts of lockdown should be trivialized. There are real sacrifices being made, and I've one of the biggest concerns I've had throughout this pandemic is that mental health has been negated. Um, just as mental health was starting to get more of a trajectory in terms of attention over the last 10 years, this lockdown, it's all been about brute sort of practicality, social distance, wash your hands, all that sort of thing. It's very important. But I do think that the mental health side of this has been hugely overlooked. Um, so this is the cover of the Metro the other day. Carry on campus, and you see there three students at Manchester Metropolitan University. Um, I think part of the problem is, I'm reluctant to criticise the government on its handling of coronavirus because I do think it's a genuinely um, unprecedented situation, at least in modern times. And I honestly think that there's going to be challenges whoever is in charge. But I do think one of the problems has been mixed messages. So, 40 universities across the country have now confirmed COVID-19 infection since reopening. That is, since reopening from the last lockdown. With Sky News reporting 717 cases among students and staff. Those affected include Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester Metropolitan, Essex, and Edinburgh Napier universities. Education Secretary Gavin Williamson is due to give a statement to the House of Commons today. That's from Tuesday. Um, I do think there's real problems here. There's been reports, for example, that students being forced into lockdown haven't had access to toiletries. Now that's a serious problem, obviously. Um, and just want to make a few quotations here. Let's see, because I'm just looking at various reports um, consecutively here. Let's see. Labour is calling on Mr. Williamson to answer a string of questions today, including what steps are being put in place to support students' mental health. So I'm pleased Labour is bringing it up. Shadow Education Secretary Kate Green said after days of silence, this statement is a chance for the Education Secretary to end his Invisible Man Act. Williamson's been criticised for his low key presence. Um, Students at Manchester Metropolitan University were reprimanded for putting sarcastic signs on the windows saying HMP MCU. Um, I think universities really need to be sympathetic to the students and give them all the amenities they need under the situation. As Sir Michael Barber said, he's an educationalist. Universities should be seeking to support their students, not punish them. Um, and there has been mixed messages from the government because Health Minister Helen Whately told Sky News that stopping students returning to their families for Christmas could not be ruled out. But then Downing Street, hours later, said we would expect all students to be able to go home at Christmas. So you can imagine a young person, in this lockdown situation, getting these mixed messages. It is very disillusioning. Um, I've said throughout this pandemic that basic amenities, things like food and toiletries, I mean, they're human rights actually. I mean, we can't overlook the human rights side of this. And some people might scoff of that. I think it's a very real issue. Um, if you are in a lockdown situation, if you are legally obliged to stay in a particular building, then it's incumbent on the authorities to make sure that you have the facilities that you need, because otherwise you're putting people in a position where they're forced to break the regulations in order to get basic amenities. And I don't accept this idea, oh, we could just order it online or everything's straightforward. Not necessarily. What if Wi-Fi's down? It's not, you can't just have a one size fits all sort of attitude. There needs to be a degree of flexibility. And by the way, I'm saying this not as a COVID denier. I have a big problem actually with those people who are going out and recklessly protesting and demanding that there be no restrictions. They're foolish. They're selfish idiots, actually. Um, but this varies from institution to institution. Glasgow University has announced it will offer all students in halls of residence a 4-week rent rebate, so fair play. That's the sort of thing universities should be looking at to kind of balance out the sacrifices that students are making. These days students get quite a bad rep. They're seen as oversensitive. They're, called snowflakes, all the rest of it. But I think there is real issues here. These students of this generation are facing things that, for example, I didn't face at university, and I suspect most of the people criticizing them didn't face at university, i.e., baby boomers who went to uni in the 60s and 70s. They didn't have to go through this. It's all very well to criticize these young people, but the pressure is going to be mounting, especially if they're sharing flats. Um, and I think as much as possible should be done to support them. Certainly not penalize them for putting sarcastic messages on the windows. Um, whether people think it's exaggerated or not is another matter, but the focus should be on giving them the aid that they need in this time. I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, we are one of the world's most powerful, most prosperous countries. There's really no reason why people in lockdown shouldn't be given the amenities that they need. Um, and students saying that they're not getting access to toilet rolls. If that's true, and I stress if it's true, that's disgraceful. Um, I mean, that should not be happening in this country. So let me know your thoughts. Maybe you are a student. Actually, I'd like to hear from students. Maybe you are in lockdown right now. I feel sympathy with you because I can imagine it must be very, very straining, especially with so much uncertainty. I mean, the idea that it's increasingly looking actually like Christmas in general is not going to be normal, and I live by myself. Usually I would go to visit my parents in Scotland. So if things are different this year, the only Christmas in my life that I didn't spend with my family was 2018 when I was in China. And even then, there was a relatively festive atmosphere because the students put on an effort. My students, they were great. So I, I don't want to think that I'm going to have a lonely Christmas. Um, so I've huge sympathy with students. Let me know your thoughts.